Before the whistle, before the roar of the crowd, there's one moment. A moment where there's one man carrying more than just himself, but the spirit of the nation.
Between 2014 to 2018, I got my pro card, which again was the quickest time anyone had moved from becoming an amateur to becoming a pro. I became the youngest guy to win an IFBB pro card in South Africa, and I became the first black guy to do it.
In South Africa, rugby is more than just a game. It's identity, it's pride, it's history. And in that space stands a powerful presence, a warrior.
Now I have to ask, if you had to pick one, would you go bodybuilding or Impi?
Yeah, man, that is a hard ask. That is a hard ask.
Today we step into the story of Sibusiso Kotelo, the Impi warrior of the South African rugby national team. Who is the man behind the image, what shaped him, and what it means to represent South Africa. This is more than rugby. This is the Impi warrior, Sibusiso Kotelo. Welcome to Off the Pitch, brother.
Yeah, what's up, my brother?
I'm fantastic, man.
Oh, that's good. Well, thanks for coming on, yeah, man. I really appreciate it.
You're absolutely
It's
welcome.
an honor to have you on, yeah.
Thank you so much, man.
But yeah, I'm just excited to hear your story, man. You've inspired so many people of South Africa.
Yeah.
So I just want to ask you, how has your journey been? Tell us more about Sibusiso Kotelo.
Jeez, where do I start? So I am from a small township from Durban called Lamontville. Went to high school there, born and raised in Durban. And from there, I then studied at UCT, which is the University of Cape Town. So I moved that side. And then I found myself in Johannesburg doing exactly what I love, which is bodybuilding.
Lovely. I mean, I've never felt so small in my life just by looking at someone's neck. But anyway. Now, but I've seen you've been on a few chats and podcasts and whatnot, and I've seen that there were stages in your life where you've had to sleep in your car to overcome certain things in life, and it's that's so special because it's part of the journey that you've had since you were a young kid to where you are now. It's just inspiring, man.
Yeah, 100%. Look, so let me give you maybe more detail around my introduction. So I was fortunate enough, I always say, that I had more than two brain cells. So throughout high school and primary, I was on academic scholarship. And then when I got to university, I also had an academic scholarship heading into UCT, studied engineering that side. And I then came back to Durban. And while I was in Durban, I was training at the Virgin Active. And a bodybuilder at the time called Andrew Hudson walked up to me and was like, "Hey, listen, dude, I think you really got good genetics for bodybuilding." I had no idea what that is. I come from a traditional rugby school. I played rugby. I came from a very big sporting university, which, part of it is the Varsity Cup, very big, which is also very rugby orientated as a varsity. And I was like, okay, cool, let's try this thing out. I tried it out. First year, 2014, I was a junior, and at the time, they said that I was the third biggest junior they've ever had on stage. I think I was 100. I was 102 kilos in my first, competition. And then I skipped the July season, and then I went straight to provincials. At the time, there's a gentleman called Joe Manju. He was in charge of the KZN region in terms of bodybuilding. And for the first time in his career as the chairman of bodybuilding, he invited a junior to contest the senior overall lineup. I didn't win that, but for me, it was really a feather in my hat knowing that this guy sees that much potential. I then went to essays that year, and I had my ass kicked, which was possibly the best thing to happen into my bodybuilding career at the time, because it gave me a very level head to understanding what else do I need to do in order for me to progress. It's easy to do well, and keep going when things are going right, but to bounce back, from defeats. I think I came fourth at that competition.
Okay.
But what was full is that the following year, which was 2015, I then made cover of what was back in the day was the bodybuilding magazine in South Africa called Muscle Evolution. And at the time, I became the youngest guy to grace the cover of that magazine. And that's when I actually got my name, my stage name, which was called the Kid Prodigy, because the title of the magazine was The Kid Prodigy, a Phenomena Walking Amongst Us. And that was, you know, really great. But at the time, I really had no idea what I really wanted to do with my life. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to pack my bags and head to Johannesburg. And at the time, I had a coach who invited me over here to Johannesburg to pursue my bodybuilding dream. And we started working together. And in 4 years, between 2014 to 2018, I got my pro card, which again was the quickest time anyone had moved from becoming an amateur to becoming a pro at the time, right? And I then became the youngest. I became the youngest guy to win an IFBB pro card in South Africa, and I became the first black guy to do it. You know, but the journey to getting there wasn't an easy one, right? As you've mentioned before, it was a rocky road. You know, at times I had to sleep in the car because I couldn't make, you know, I couldn't find a place to stay. Basically, I dieted on bread, dieted on just purely supplements because at the time, I was fortunate enough that I had a sponsorship and they were providing me with supplements, but no one really knew what was going on. And this story, I'm only telling it now after the experience. You know what I mean? At the
Yeah.
time, no one knew what was going on because I just wanted to figure it out. So that's always been part of my story, but the story is not to draw empathy or to tell about a sad story. It's about encouraging someone. It's about encouraging someone to understand that they too can make it despite the odds. They too should not see themselves as just that's all it is to them. Because I could have continued sipping my car and maybe driving back home, realizing this dream that I'm trying to pursue is not worth it. It's not going to happen. But it's about encouraging someone and making them understand that it is possible to break through the barriers and seeing yourself further than where you currently are.
And what moment was it where you were like, your mind just shifted? You were like, this has to change.
You know, I think I've been blessed to have a mentality that is always looking to reverse engineer the process. I think also maybe that comes from my engineering background. But for me, when I sat down with my coach at the time and he said, listen, let's pursue a IFBB pro card. At first, I had no idea what that was. You remember when I did bodybuilding, I was doing it in small stages. I could only, see this far. So for example, I was only prepping for this competition because it's a qualify for that competition. And that's all I could see. I had
Yeah.
no idea what the dream and pursuit is in terms of being an IFBB pro card, having an IFBB pro card. I had no inkling at what that meant up until I met my coach who saw further than me. So when I sat down, I was like, okay, cool. How do I now reverse engineer the process? What does it mean to be an IFBB pro card? So I started, coming to that idea in terms of what it looks like. And I know it sounds cliche, like most of the stuff, that you always advise someone with, it always sounds cliche, but the reality is the cliche stuff really works, because I always
Yeah.
had the end goal in mind. That for me was what pushed me. What was the end goal in mind? The end goal is to get the IFBB Pro card. So for me, what was currently going on was not going to stop me or derail me to what I'm trying to see. And the image in my head was so vividly clear that nothing was going to persuade me otherwise. Nothing was going to stop me, So nothing was worth me giving up the picture that I had in my mind to get to that goal. So for me, I think it was having those moments. Was it hard? Yes. Was there times where I was like, what am I doing? Should I go home? Absolutely yes. But then you just double down, sit back, and you realize, what is it that I'm trying to achieve? And just keep going.
And obviously, you're saying now that you learned a lot while doing it firsthand. You say you never really planned on going into bodybuilding. What
Yeah.
what would you say is the biggest thing you've like learned and taken on since you've actually taken this more seriously?
Oh my word. Bodybuilding has taught me a lot, bro. It's shaped who I am. It's molded who I've become. And I think sometimes, it becomes a very futile experience if you're not going to take the lessons you learn from bodybuilding, or maybe let me just say any other sporting code, if you do it at the highest level and you don't transfer that to the other, spheres of your life, but I'm just lucky that I do a sport that, I like to believe that people understand that bodybuilding is one of those few sports you do for 24 hours. You know, you watch how much water you take, you watch what time you sleep, how many hours you clocking in, you know, your meals, you know, most of your work that you actually do with bodybuilding is outside the gym. The gym sometimes becomes the easy part, you know. So it's taking that discipline, you know, bodybuilding in retrospect is such a monotonous sport, but it actually gives you such discipline. It grounds you. It also keeps you away from trouble, you know, in the sense that when we're on
Yeah.
prep, you know, there's just certain things I'm not going to attend. There's events I'm not going to, you know, attend or pitch up to because, as I said, there's a certain time I need to sleep. It doesn't mean that I don't have a life. It just means for a temporary period of time, I'm focused and dedicated to this. So the lessons I've learned in bodybuilding have, you know, propelled me to exercising those same lessons, you know, in my other spheres of my life. And I've seen the transformation. I've seen how it looks like, and it's been a worthwhile journey. You know, I now can confidently say that I wouldn't do anything else with my life. I love what I do. I'm blessed and privileged to be doing what I do. You know, very few
Yeah.
people get to wake up in the morning and get to, you know, chase after their passion. You know, so it's been a beautiful journey for me.
I mean, I have a few notes here. You obviously IFBB Pro. You were the winner in the Sean Roden Classic
Yeah,
show.
yeah,
You finished third place in the Monster Zim Pro show.
yeah,
And in the Chicago Pro debut, you finished ninth.
yeah,
So I mean, for any like gym fanatic out there, they know that that's no small achievement, you know.
yeah.
Um, and I'm sure it takes a lot of dedication, you know, planning, structuring, dieting. Like you say, gym. You know, there's so many things you know, like sleeping, what you eat, you know, what you're drinking, or how many liters of water you're having a day.
Yeah.
You know, everything adds up. What is your like your dieting and your preparation for like, let's say like a full week, for example?
Jeez. um, I'll give you more or less my day. So I'm eating right now, because I'm actually preparing for a show that's coming up. So I'm eating about 1.2 kilos of protein a day. Obviously that's spread between fish, chicken, and mince. And then on my high carb, I have 450 grams of carbs, uncooked rice. And then on my low carb, I have 250 grams uncooked rice, right? So I normally do my stuff uncooked. And then
Uncooked.
yeah, uncooked. Yeah, I normally weigh my stuff uncooked. Because
Okay.
obviously the stuff is cooked, you know, there's other things that you need to calculate. So I'd rather just work with uncooked weights at the moment. And then I have obviously, you know, almond butter. I have flaxseed oil, just obviously to get the fats in. That's just my eating, you know what I mean? So it is a lot of, as I said, you know, most of the work that you'll do for bodybuilding sometimes is aside of the gym. The gym becomes the fun part, especially when you're in prep, right? But it's the eating. It's you know, sometimes being hungry because obviously you capped at a certain calorie deficit. So that's the journey.
And do you find it difficult to like obviously when you're preparing for a show, you obviously need to bulk, then cut. Is
Yeah.
what would you say is the easiest part?
It's not easy, right? It's absolutely not easy, but I genuinely want to say that, you know, bulking, especially now at this level, because now you're working, you know, the game, the margins are very small, right? In terms
Yeah.
of how much you put on and whatever the case may be. So bulking now sometimes becomes the most difficult part, you know, because now trying to put in as much calories as you're trying to, but your stomach is just also not trying to expand as quickly as it wants to. So bulking
Yeah.
can become tricky, you know what I mean? Like when it comes to prep, I think it's just, you know, the tiredness, you know, because you're training, there's cardio, but the bulking can become tricky, you know. Like sometimes you feel, it sounds weird to say, but you feel heavy for your own body. Like it feels like you're dragging your body around. You
Yeah.
know, I've been 146 at a point in time in my career, and man, I couldn't even tie my own shoes, you know? So it can get a bit heavy where you're like, wow, I'm carrying a lot of weight. You know, back in the day, I did it a bit foolishly. You know, I didn't really grow with my body. But now, you know, as you get older and wiser, there's other tricks that you can, you know, work around. And the body's also maturing, right? So as your body
Yeah.
matures, you know, you're starting to understand your own physique in terms of what it needs and what it doesn't need.
What are you weighing now, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I'm in contest, as I said, I'm 125 kilos now, because obviously I'm
Okay.
prepping for stage. but that's me being on stage. So when I compete, I'm probably like 125, 126 on stage. So, obviously we cut and then we have a, carb up process that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's me right now.
And then I've also seen in another podcast you did, you were competing in one of the shows, and you gave away your medal to one of
Yeah.
the spectators.
Yeah. Look, at the core of it, right, bodybuilding can be a very conceited, vain sport. It's all about you, right? Because everything that you're doing, the supplements, the food that you're eating, it's a very eye sport, right? And it's a one-man sport. I'm not in a team sports by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm fortunate enough that I have a team around me. I've got an ecosystem, I've got a beautiful wife that supports me, I've got my friends, my training partners, my sponsors, my coach. I've got a manager that manages me and stuff. So I've got a team. Um, so when I turned pro, I remember the first thing that happened was everyone was like eager to see if I'm going to change my Instagram handle, because most pros, and I don't mean any disrespect to any pro that does this, they've got IFBB pro so and so. And I kept my name and surname as is because I've always understood that for me, I'm Sibusiso Kotelo that decided to do bodybuilding. Bodybuilding doesn't define who I am. You're right. It's part of
Exactly.
what I do. You know what I mean? It's part of what I do. So with that, it also gave me a very mental, cognitive behavior to understand that I'm also not doing this for myself. It's more than just being me. So to cut a long story short, what happened with that, gents, is that we were competing in one of the provinces here in South Africa. And as we're competing, I'm seeing this guy in my peripheral, as we're posing on stage. And the only reason I noticed him is because he wasn't supposed to be there, because obviously, backstage is demarcated for athletes only. But this guy's in a
Yeah.
full-on tracksuit. I still don't understand. I don't know how he got there till today. Anyway, we get on stage, he stops me, and the first thing he says to me, he says, "Hey, bud, I'm so happy to see you on stage. I got a day pass to come and see you." So now my brain is all confused. I mean, I just got off stage. This guy's telling me about day pass, have no idea what that means. So I'm like, "What do you mean a day pass?" He's like, "Dude, since you announced that you were coming to compete here, I asked, if I can get a day pass to come and see you, because your journey has inspired me so much that I took myself to a rehabilitation center because I was addicted on drugs. So seeing you, working out, doing what you do has inspired me to change my life and, live a clean life." And man, I gave him a hug. I took off my medal, I signed it for him, and I gave it to him, because for me, that's what bodybuilding is. It's tapping
100%.
into someone's mentality, in making them understand that they too can do what I do. Number one. Number two is that what lesson can you take from what I'm doing? And sometimes it doesn't translate. The inspiration you give someone through sporting, it doesn't have to translate in me trying to do that sport. Right now, my wife got me into watching tennis. I'm a big Alcaraz fan. Am I trying to pick up a tennis
Yeah.
racket and try to play tennis? Absolutely not. But when I look at his journey, I look at his life, I look at how disciplined he is, the small nuances he has, with all the millions he has, he still stays with his parents. I look at the character, I'm like, what can I learn from this guy that has now cultivated the champion that he is? So for me, for him to take that upon, because when he said this, he didn't say anything about training. He just said, "Looking at you, I wanted to change my life." He didn't say he wants to get to the gym. So for me, that's what bodybuilding is. Someone drawing inspiration from what you do, understanding what you had to do to get to where you are, and them taking those lessons and implicating them and implementing them in their lives, was more than the medal I had on my neck that day. It was that for me was the win. To be honest with you, I think I won that show. I think I won my division, but it for me, that win paled in comparison to him coming up
Yeah.
to me and saying, "Hey, listen, I changed my life because of you." Equitably, I'm a personal trainer and an online coach. I remember in 2018, actually, when I got my pro card, one of my clients, female, we've been training for a while. And as I got my pro card, she sends me this very long message. Actually, no, she first sent me a picture of herself. And it was two pictures. It was one that she had taken as a before picture and the other one in a bikini. So now I'm getting off stage. I'm like, "Hey, why is this lady sending me a pro?" I just got off stage, right? And then this
Yeah.
long message comes through, and she literally basically breaks it down and says, "Listen, I've trained with you. I think we're training for like 2 years." And she says that this is a comparison, between me when I was, this, looking like this versus now. And then she sends me another picture where she was, I think, 34 at the time. She was like, the last time I was confident enough to wear a bikini at the beach, I was 24. So 10 years, it was 10 years since she wore a bikini confident at the beach. But now at the age of 34, she was able to do it. Because when I was competing in Philippines, it was December. So obviously it was summer in South Africa. And
Yeah.
she's like, dude, the beach right now, confidence in my skin. I look great and I feel great. And I promise you, my brother, once again, I mean, I had now achieved being the first IFBB Pro Card black guy to do it in South Africa. But reading that message, there was not amount of money you could put in my bank to make me that happy. That medal and that prize almost faded in comparison, it because of what I was able to impart in my clients, in them just feeling confident in their skin. And for me, that you can't buy, that you can't equate that to anything, what you can
No.
do for someone else. You know what I mean? And I believe that. I believe we're here to serve, we're here to inspire. The greatest joy that I have is seeing someone do good and do better. And I feel like if we did that as a collective in society, we'd have very little problems in society. That's what I believe. But the world has unfortunately progressed that everything has become so conceited. It's all about ourselves, what we can do, how
Yeah.
much money we have, how much flexing I can do on social media, which car I drive,
That's
who do I
it.
hang around with. But I believe if you took your skill as Darian and you're like, listen, this is what I do, this is my talent and my skill, but how can I use my talent and the skill to impact others? And if everyone had that mentality, we'd have very little problems in society.
I mean, definitely. I mean, if everybody did that, and then we get that same feeling that you're getting with a stranger coming up to you and saying, "Oh, Sibusiso, thank you for inspiring me. You've changed my
Yeah,
life." If everybody had that feeling, the world would be a different place, man.
absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, staying on the gym, how much do you
Yeah.
bench press? Because I've seen
You know,
on the podcast, it was about 220, I think you said.
yeah. Look, I mean, so here's
That's
the thing, right? The reason why I think these numbers sometimes, don't really matter in bodybuilding is that I always draw people to this ideology is that bodybuilding is an art, right? Yeah, don't get me wrong. We very strong. One of my training partners, Muzi Maluleka, that guy, I think he squats like 6 plates with ease. That's about
yo.
280 kilos.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong, we are very strong, but when you look at the art of bodybuilding, most of us, we look, the aestheticness of it all, we look like we can bench more than what we look because at the end of the day, bodybuilding is about an art, right? But yes, so answer the
Yeah.
question, you can bench about 220, 240 on a good day. But I'll be very honest with you, I haven't bench pressed in a while in terms of trying to see how heavy I can go. Because now it's about training hard but staying injury free because also as you get older you're very prone to becoming injured, so now it's about just playing the smart game but also really pushing heavy.
So do you currently still have a trainer with you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, 100%. I got a trainer at the moment. He's in Kuwait. I consult with him quite a lot. And over and above that, man, you also, as I said, you also got to build an ecosystem. So I need to give, flowers to guys that have, been in my circle, even, within the IFBB Pro space. One of them is Samson Dawuda. He's, I think, 2023 or 2024 Mr. Olympia. I stand corrected. I might be wrong, but for all reference purposes, he is Mr. Olympia. Samson Dawuda, he's one of my guys that I'll send pictures with. I'll be like, hey, bud, listen, look at this. And what becomes very humbling in that experience is that technically I'm his competition. I might not be on the Olympia stage yet, but we still actively competing. He doesn't owe me, anything. He doesn't owe me any feedback. He doesn't owe me to have that peripheral view in terms of saying, hey, how do you look? But he's there, he's in my corner. So I'm fortunate enough that I've got these kind of guys that I work with around me, and I've met very incredible guys along the journey. Nathan De Asher from the UK, incredible guy. William Barnack, incredible guy. Andrew Jack, he currently just won Arnold, Ohio, incredible gents. Quinton Araya from Canada. These are all incredible guys that, have hurdled around me and they just genuinely want the best for me.
Now, look, the things you have done in such a short time, I mean, the awards speak for itself. All these
Thanks.
awards that you've broken.
It's not
And
done
yeah,
yet, man.
you're inspiring. Yeah, you're
Not
still
done.
going. You're still going.
Yeah.
Moving towards the Impi Warrior side now, that must have been some journey. That must have been some story.
Incredible.
So I'd love
It's
to
an
hear about that.
it's an incredible journey, man. So I was actually supposed to do that, I think, in 2023, or either late 2022 or early 2023. But unfortunately, that year I had so many international commitments. I think I competed in Brazil, South Korea, and I did Spain that year, and they were staggered shows. And I
Yeah.
couldn't commit because, every time I travel, it'd be 2 weeks at a time. So, and some of the matches were going to clash. So when the Saru marketing manager approached me, I just had to humbly turn it down. And he then asked if there was another guy I could actually look for in order to fill take the space. I then had a guy called Daniel, one of my mates, and he then became Impi. So when I finished the season in 2024 and I came back from Dubai, you saw a post, my Instagram, that said that I'm done for the season. And luckily I'd been done in the season. I think it was around June, and the Springboks about to get on this on the rugby pitch the next month. He sends me a message and he's like, "Bud, here's another opportunity coming full circle." So I was like, "Hey man, listen, let's try it out." And then we got on stage, man. So I just want to really give props and a salutation to Marlon Kruger for genuinely not giving up on me, because he could have been like, "Dude, let's carry on with this guy that we already had." Because, the Impies before me are really incredible gents. They really carry the torch, carry that spear quite well. And he said, "Listen, let's do it." And we got on the field, and man, what an experience! My first experience was Johannesburg, Ellis Park, and Brew. It is absolutely exhilarating. It's nothing. I actually can't put it to words. How it
Yeah.
feels. And my first experience actually goes something like this. I remember I got out to the stadium, and I'm seeing this crowd of, must understand, South Africa's, we rugby fanatics, so we always
Yeah.
sell out our stadiums, right? So as I walk out the tunnel, the song is playing, and the crowd it just roars. And now I'm looking at the people in front of me, and I'm like, wow, this is a lot of people. At that very moment, my brain goes, hold on, this is a stadium. There's more people behind you. And as I turn around, I'm like, oh my goodness. And now, being an ambassador of the rugby, you're basically the curtain raiser for the Springboks. So all eyes
Exactly.
are genuinely on you. And I just was like, oh my goodness, this is a lot. But the reception I
Your
had,
adrenaline levels must have been crazy.
man, was shooting high, man. And it was incredible, experience. And then I did Cape Town. This was 2024. And then I did the last one, which was Nelspruit. Now, Nelspruit for me, that's when I absolutely, I think I embodied, the role that I was doing, simply because of the reception that I had from the Springbok gents. Now, people see these guys on TV and, on magazines and billboards, whatever the case may be. I've got the opportunity and experience to actually, interact with them on a one-on-one basis. And they are down to earth, incredible, incredible human beings. And man, I can't, and I promise you, I'm not saying this because I run out for them. I
Yeah, yeah, no,
genuinely,
I understand.
they are genuine, down to earth guys. And what Rassie Erasmus has done with the team culture and what they stand for and what they represent, I don't think, it gets better than this, right? They're such incredible guys, and I'll never forget, I bumped into, a few of them, I won't mention names, and one of them came up to me and took my hand and was like, "Bud, every time you walk out that field before us, we just feel like there's this proverbial big brother that's, out there to level out the playing field for us, to come in and say that we're about to go to war. So thank you so much." So for me to have the Springboks, the best team in the world, I don't care who says what,
Yeah,
we really, to,
100%.
you know what I mean? For them to come out and say they're inspired by me walking them out, that's when for me was the moment I was like, I will do this thing for as long as they want me to do it, because of how they just received me, bro. Like, I even remember
Yeah, I know.
Oh, so I'm a Durban boy, as I said. I was going home, and Sia Kulisi saw that I'm flying home, and he's like, "Dude, Durban?" I'm like, "Bud, oh, you didn't know?" So we're chatting on Instagram. I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I'm from Durban." He's like, "Bro, come through, come watch us play." I'm like, "Huh, bro?"
Yeah.
So for someone who's that busy, you're a captain, you know, because obviously he was playing for
Yeah.
the is, and for him to be like, "Dude, come play," and organize tickets for, you know, a mere mortal like me, I was like, that shows you the kind of hearts these guys have, you know. Uh, 2 weeks ago, no, actually not 2 weeks ago, on Thursday, last Thursday, I was invited to live golf, and as I get there, Lord behold, Peter Steph Tutoitz is in the same, you know, vicinity that I'm in. Bro, he literally walked through the crowd, came up to me, shook my hand. He's like, "How's it, bud?" And the reason for me that means a lot is because it's easy to pass off what impies do as just entertainment, and it's just those guys. But for them, it
Yeah.
means that he took notice of me enough to be able to pinpoint me in the crowd. I understand I'm not a hard guy to miss, but
Yeah.
you know, it means that much that for them it's not just entertainment segments. They take us walking off that field, you know, as seriously as basically what they do. And bro, it means so much. And I can't labor enough on this. I mean, I'd chew your ear off the whole night here, bro, if I tell you how much, you know,
Yeah. No,
how
I
much
mean,
I
I
have for them and how much respect they have for me. It means a lot, bro. Like Cheslin Kobe and I, you know, he's a birthday just a day before me, you know. So I remember I sent him a happy birthday. And then the next day he found out that it's my birthday. He sends me a happy birthday. So that's just the camaraderie that we have. You know, I even remember the one time I just pulled into the stadium, and you know, obviously we kind of have the same, you know, place that we enter. But as the bus
yeah.
got there, I'm, oh my word, these guys are here. So I'm like trying to hide myself because I'm like, Bruce, the Springboks. I don't want to be, you know, in their spotlights, you know, because obviously the camera's on
Yeah.
them. I promise you, bro, without hesitating, without second guessing themselves, Ches and Colby, and I think it was Kurdley Aronsa, they literally pulled me in and they're like, dude, like, why are you making it seem like you're not part of us? I'm like, what? Like, they literally just pulled me in, bro, and I walked in with them.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I was like, what's going on here? But it's just who they are. But they just down to earth, great guys. I can't label that enough. But I really love those boys, man, and I've so much respect for them, just as people, and definitely, man, as the guys that just go on the field and pour their whole hearts out. I have so much respect for them.
I know, and I think what Russ is doing is incredible. I mean, for any youngster coming up, going through the process of becoming the professional Springbok rugby player,
Yeah,
the foundations that is put up there for a youngster, you know, like the likes of Siya Kolisi that lead by example, that show them
yeah,
the right ways to do things, you know. And it's
yeah,
so special to see that they actually appreciate what the MPs are doing, because it shows that, you know, your little bit of like spotlight is part
yeah,
of their process of getting ready for the game. You know,
yeah.
they might say, they might just, you know, might not be focusing on you, but you know, that walkout, that song that you play, that's part of their like mental preparation for the game. You know what I mean?
100%, 100%, bro. Like literally, I think as a song, as soon as a song drops, it's like EMP is coming. Like I could you could feel the shift in the tunnel where, you know, everyone is like hugging each other and getting each other rolled up for their thing. But as soon as the song goes EMP, you see the guys. It's like all like, okay, cool. Now we're about to go to war, and you can see that tension building up. So absolutely, man. They really value that segment, and it's I really hope it goes a long way for them. It's always been my biggest prayer that I hope it means to them what it means, you know, for us to do it for them.
And do you think this would transpire into more than just home games, or do you think it's just home games for the minute?
For now it's home games, but we really are hoping and praying that, you know, it can become more. And the reason I know it can become more, it's because I will never forget this. I promise you. Like this lady, I'm in Cape Town. And again, you know, sometimes you have this thing, a dissociation, because as soon as you put on the regalia, you're like, okay, I'm impy. But as soon as you put on your normal clothing, you're like, oh man, I'm just walking around the stadium. So I didn't realize that this lady still, you know, clocked me. So this old lady comes up to me, probably like 70 years old, man. She goes up to me, she goes, you the impy guy, hey? So I'm like, let me just mess with her. I'm like, no, ma'am, I'm not. She goes, no, ma'am, you are the Impi guy. I'm like, yes, ma'am, I am. She goes, you know what? Next to the national anthem, you're the most important thing that happens there. And for me, bro, like again, for someone to equate the importance of the Impis walking off on the field as the national anthem, like you must understand, this is a national anthem. So for me, it meant that
Exactly.
much. So, you know, without, blowing this up to more what it is, someone even said to me, it's like, this is the equivalent of our rebuttal to the haka, so it's becoming such a customary thing for us to do that when I remember I did it, and then they saw the guys leave, abroad, and they're like, why are you still here? Aren't you going to walk off the guys? I'm like, nah, guys, it's still local games, it's always been local games. They're like, no, this thing, we should sign a petition because we want to see the Springbok, the Impis walk on the field for them, even internationally, because if the New Zealanders can have the haka, we could have the Impis. That's our rebuttal. So
Yeah.
that's where people's mentality is at. That's where everyone's notion is. So absolutely, man. Would this be an opportunity for it to grow and become that big? I think so, because it's been engraved in our heritage that much that people now have such an association with the Springboks walking on the field with the Impies that it's become synonymous with the other. It's genuinely like you can't see the New Zealand team starting a rugby match without doing the haka. It's become
Exactly.
important. You know what I mean?
Have you ever had one of the opponent teams come up to you and just say something about your physique or?
All the time, man. Yeah,
Oh, for
it
real?
happens. Yeah, it happens more than you know than you think it does. Sometimes, obviously, I mean, in the tunnel, everyone's serious. Not, but normally, because also I get to the stadium quite early. So as they're
Yeah.
warming up stuff, I'll see the boys, and I remember the Italians. They're like, you kept looking at each other like, geez, like this guy. Because we also rock up on the field, early. I normally wear my Springbok jersey. So I remember they kept looking at each other. Now because as I said, bro, like the Springboks, even the managements, bro, like they such nice guys. So sometimes I'd be chilling with the managements while the boys are warming up. So now they got confused. They're like, is he part of the team? Is he part of so there's always these questions up until obviously they see me on the field, and then I think they make the relationship. Oh, okay, this is the guy that also this. But yeah, normally they really, really do make a comment.
And then I have to speak about this iconic post, the one with you
Yeah.
and Sia Kolisi.
Yeah, man.
Was that planned, or was that just luck?
Everyone asked that question. Let me break down how that picture came about. So Marlon, the marketing manager, the one I told you about that got me into this gig, he's also the creative director in terms of how this thing should look like. So he's the guy that will say, okay, listen, for this game, we're aggressive. We need to go out there, or he'd be like, for this game, we kind of laid back, but we're still aggressive. But, so he narrates the story for us, like in terms of where we are,
Okay.
how we need to pitch up and rock up, right? So I remember when he was telling me this direction, right? So obviously there's three of us, and the two guys, they do the flips and whatever, but he's like, dude, you're the strong character, you stern, you're the big guy, this is what you do. And when he gave me that directive, so in my mind, I'm like, yo, like, so what else am I supposed to do? And I never forget, he was like, dude, like, you're the guy that has the spear, and you supposed to direct the boys, and point the direction to the boys in terms of telling them that they're about to, pierce through the opposition. So now that story
Yeah.
is ringing in my head. So I'll never forget, because that picture was actually taken in Johannesburg. It was actually my first time on the field that picture was taken. And I remember Sia
No,
Kolisi
that's incredible.
comes out the tunnel, and I have the spear pointing at him. And then the story popped up in my head where Marlon is like, you are directing the boys to go out there and fight. So all I did was literally, there's a video, of course, that, that plays before that picture was taken. I literally almost drew Sia with the spear out of the tunnel. So as he was running towards me, because I had the spear pointing at him, I turned it around and I pulled him out as if like I'm pulling him out the spear. And as he went past me, I then shooted him into the crowd. And it just so happened that as I was doing that, he was also jumping up. And obviously the photographer was just at the right place at the right time. And the smoke was still out there with New Zealand at the back of me. So everything it almost seems like it was planned, but the Lord knows it was really not planned. It was also just me remembering the narration that Marlon and the cues that he gave me. So I was like, okay, cool, this is what he meant, and I just decided to recite, exactly what he said. And it came out so beautifully as one of the coldest pictures in rugby history, apparently.
Nah, I
So yeah,
think it is.
it really wasn't bad.
Definitely one of the top ones.
And I think what makes it, that special is the fact that, for the first time, the New Zealand boys almost broke their line, because I think they were just so interested to see what was going on. So it also just kind of, played into the whole narrative, but it really wasn't planned.
And obviously, being an Impi warrior, obviously a lot on your shoulders as well, with the responsibility of, delivering on before the big games. Creating this atmosphere of, intensity and like hype.
For sure.
Um, outside of that, do you feel like you also carry this expectation of that Impi warrior, or is it just inside the Springbok camp?
Look, I won't lie, bro. If you ask me this question, maybe when I started the MP journey, I'd be like, nah, man, I just go there, do my job, and walk out. But as I said earlier, because the boys have basically, you know, eh, inherited me into the atmosphere, I now also know I've got a responsibility to represent accordingly, right? Because I'm now proverbially part of the extension of SARU, South African Rugby Union. I'm part of the Springboks, as much as I'm not a Springbok, but I'm part of the Springbok family, in the sense that I
Yeah.
now, and to be honest, it wasn't a hard thing to do, only because of my sporting code anyway. Because the life that I live, I keep to myself. I show people what I want to show them. So that's the life that I live. It just fitted so meticulously, that it didn't seem like I had to do more. It just was a matter of, I now just have this thing in my head of realizing that there is responsibility, that I now have. And with that responsibility also comes the fact that sometimes people recognize me as IFBB Pro Sibusiso Kotelo, and sometimes I'm just Impi, where most kids, and they were my favorite people, by the way, some kids genuinely think I'm a superhero, that I don't exist, and I just
I
rock
love
up for
it.
the. Yeah, they're just, some kids genuinely, I'll never forget, this one kid was so excited to see me, started crying. And not because of anything else, but I think his brain was like, I've seen this guy on TV, but I thought he just comes on and then he goes off and he never exists ever again. He didn't think I was actually a real person. So with most kids, I'm Impy. That's all I am. Hey Impy, hey Impy. And I love that, because for them, that's also the closest, some of them, it will always be the closest that maybe will experience to the Springboks, because obviously they're busy, they're doing other stuff, and, they're training. So they also spread thin with where they can and cannot be. But for me to just walk around and people like, hey, this is Impy, it's always about, making sure that people get the experience of, the whole rugby experience, Impy included.
Now I have to ask, if you had to
Yeah.
pick one, would you going bodybuilding or Impi?
Yeah, man, that is a hard ask. That is a hard ask. I'll pick bodybuilding. And the reality is, it's because of bodybuilding that I was able to become Impi, right? So
Makes
at
sense.
the core of it all, I'm Christian, so I believe in the Bible. The Bible says that your skills and your talents will make room for you. I believe my skill and my talents in bodybuilding made room for me to become Impi. So I'll definitely always choose, my mentor Vusi always says, you got to keep the real thing the real thing. So my real thing has been a bodybuilder, and because of that, it's opened doors, that I would never have otherwise have been able to open.
100%, man. That's your stories inspired me. And
Thank you.
yeah, just lastly, man,
Yeah.
I just want you to say a few things to any young kid. You've been through lots throughout your journey. Ups and downs.
Yeah.
The spotlight's been on you. It hasn't. So there's been lots of ups and downs from your side.
For
So
sure.
if there's any like inspiring words that you could just say to any young kid that's going through the struggle of anything in life.
Look, for me, it's two things, right? The one is found, well, both actually, I think are found in scripture. The one is in Deuteronomy. It says that as the days are, so is your strength. And for me, I've always battled with that scripture. What does it mean? As the days are, so is your strength. But basically, when you break it down, it means that whatever the day comes with, you have enough strength to handle it. It might always look like it's too much. It might look like it's overwhelming. It might look like it will never come to pass. But as the days are, so is your strength. So tomorrow I might need 100% of strength, whatever that means, to handle the day. The other day I might need 20. But God has designed our lives in such a way that as the days have progressed, He knows how much strength we need, right? So for
Exactly.
me, it's always been that. It's always been, I'd want people to understand that your struggle and whatever you're going through, you have enough ability to get over it. And I promise you, sometimes it never looks like it. Never looks like there's any light at the end of the tunnel. But there is. As long as you just keep doing what you're doing, keep working on your craft, eventually, if you make enough noise with your craft and your skills, someone will hear, something will happen, right? So I think that's fundamentally it. And then the other one, I think it's in I'm paraphrasing, but he basically says that God will never tempt you with more than what you can handle. So again, it might sound, a bit cliche, but
Yeah.
we are given as much as we can handle, because that's what's supposed to refine us and get us through. Because the reality is, if my life had planned out any difference, if things was just smooth sailing, I don't think I would have gotten as tough as I've become. I wouldn't have learned the lessons that I have,
Oh
and I
yeah.
wouldn't have been able to persevere and be as consistent as I have. There was a testing of what I needed to go through. Someone actually once said something. When you look at um, gold has to be refined over and over and over and over again in order for us to find the purity of it all. But it goes through
Yeah.
fire. It goes through a lot of processing in order for us to find what it has to look like and become, this beautiful, jewelry that we want it to be. But without the fire, we don't get the end result, right? Because
Exactly.
when we find gold, wherever we, in the mines, it's just gold, but it's the processing of it and getting the impurities out of it and getting it refined that makes it the precious metal that we have. And that's our life. We go through things because we are refining, we're going through a process, to develop certain things in us that we never would have developed otherwise, in order for us to get to a point of becoming who we need to be in order to survive, where we want to go. That's it, man.
De- Definitely. I'm a big believer of, everything happens for a reason, There's a
Absolutely.
reason why you went through whatever you went through,
Yes, sir.
It shaped you to be the man you are today.
Yes, sir.
And what a man, I must say. So down to earth,
Thank you
humble.
so much.
And yeah, but Sibusiso, I appreciate your time, brother. Thank you for coming on here.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
no, it's been an honor to have you as a guest on here.
Thank you.
But yeah, when I come to South Africa, we need to organize that gym session. You need to teach me your ways,
100.
man.
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. We'll definitely do it.
All right. Well, thanks for that, my brother. I appreciate it. Huh?
Thank you so much, my brother. God bless you. Thank you.
Cheers, man. Cheers.
Yes.